Mirror, mirror on the wall, would I marry myself at all?
Better a diamond with a flaw than a pebble without. So if you find that which is precious, you're willing to accept it.
Yeah.
You'll accept it with all of its flaws because it's a diamond.
Yeah.
But a pebble, even if a pebble's flawless, right, it's still a worthless stone.
Dating, marriage, relationship became a marketplace. So remember, you're no longer traditional. You are now facing all these postmodern ideas.
Wow. So women have become the men they want to marry, and men have become the women they want to marry.
Because at the end of the day, look, if you look at the status of men in TV and popular culture.
Yeah. Love Island.
No, not even Love Island. Let's go look at Bart Simpson. Why is Homer an idiot?
I'm a council estate boy. I may not speak like one or sound like one, but I have council estate morals and values.
In your 20s, I would say that people are generally much more superficial. It's about having a wife which is almost like an accessory.
How has feminism, the explosion of feminism, impacted how people look, and it has affected both men and women?
Absolutely. This is the mess we have. We have the biggest mess in society. Look, fundamentally, what builds a civilization and society is marriage.
Yep.
That's the fundamental building blocks of any human civilization. There is no such thing as the right one coming along.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning into the second episode. Thank you for your time. I appreciate your time. Today we'll be discussing the crisis in marriage and its causes. I've got over 90 years of collective experience with me today, and hopefully we should shed some light and insight into what's the crisis in marriage and its fundamental causes, how we can overcome this as a society within our different communities. Just to touch on the first episode, if you haven't watched it, I do highly recommend that you do watch it. The feedback that I have got from the first episode, some people came back to me and said, oh, the two particular guests that I did bring on, are they from a different generation and different era? The reason I've done this podcast, and this is very important, this is what we stand for. We will represent different perspectives from within our community. There's a saying that ignorance is bliss. It's not actually bliss, it's actually stupidity. If you're solving a problem, you need to see the wider picture before you address the issues, which is why my guests and audiences will be from different backgrounds, culturally, different education levels. They all have opinions and they do exist in society. It may be small, it might be a minority, but minorities make up a majority. Just another thing about my particular podcast, I don't do any appeasement. As you can see from the first episode, we were frank and we were honest. Now, if guests come on and they give their statements or they give their assertions, if they don't back it up with evidence or anecdotal evidence, I will go through them like knife does through butter. So rest assured, no one's going to say anything unnoticed and unchallenged. I'm just going to introduce my guests now. We've got Brother Fareed. If you haven't watched the first episode, he was a keynote speaker on the first episode. He's come on again because I've got a few questions to ask him, and a few of my audience he says, what's he about? Delve into him a bit further. I've also got Brother Mizan, who, has broken marriage events for the last 20 years. He's got a very successful marriage company, and he'll be giving us pragmatic experiences about what he's found out and the evolution of marriage across the last 20 years and 30 years perhaps. So we'll start off with Brother Fareed. Thank you for joining us again. Just if the audience have just tuned in now and they haven't actually watched the first episode, just give me a brief introduction about what you are, where you are, and where you come from.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidina Rasul Kareem. I featured on your first episode, and we had quite a frank discussion, a generationally different discussion, because I'm a 45-year-old man, alhamdulillah, who's fairly recently engaged.
Congratulations.
Allah barik fik.
Mashallah.
Allah barik fik. And then you had a couple of brothers, I believe, who were in their 30s.
Absolutely, yeah.
30 years old, and they had a different kind of perception. Although I looked at some of your comments, and it seemed as though those 30-year-old brothers were almost like a throwback from a generation that had passed.
There's the irony in that, though, because they represent society, and I'm not saying, the majority of people agree with their views, but they do exist.
Absolutely, no doubt. So I've had a particular journey. I'm not an expert on married life. I think Brother Mizan could probably shed light on that. Maybe perhaps not on this platform, but another one. I wouldn't say I was an expert in seeking a wife either, but what I do have is quite extensive experience in that search, which, alhamdulillah, by Allah's grace, has come to an end now.
Thank you, Brother Fareed. So when I interviewed you in the first episode, I'm presuming that this is your first marriage and you haven't been married in the past.
That's correct. Yes,
That's correct.
Yeah, that's correct.
So you're 45 years of age, and I'm thinking it, and perhaps some of my audience is thinking it as well. Undoubtedly, you've had many potential suitors. And what I'm thinking now is within the last, let's say from the age of 25 up until 45, you've had 20 years of telling women to either, yes, you're not suitable for me, or them telling you they're not suitable for you. So if you don't mind, delve into those 20 years. What have you learnt? Why have you said no? And give the audience and myself a bit more insight into what sort of gems we can take from you.
Inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Okay. I wasn't, this is quite important to bring out here. I wasn't born and raised on the deen. Okay. And I think when Brother Mizan comes to his points, he'll be able to talk about people who have different kind of backgrounds and pasts and whatnot, and the nuances on in their searches. So seriously, I'll say I've been looking for the last sort of 10 years. Prior to that, I was also looking. One of the things I mentioned previously was that what you seek in your 20s is different to what you seek in your 30s and again in your 40s. One of the issues with I don't want to say leaving marriage till late, because everything happens in Allah's time. Okay, had I got married say 10 years ago, things might be very different, because I was a different animal. You know, I was very hot blooded. You know, I wasn't particularly patient. You know, and over the years I've gained greater knowledge of myself.
MashaAllah.
Alhamdulillah. So you know, I feel this is the right time for me to get married. In your 20s, I would say that people are generally much more superficial. It's about having a wife which is almost like an accessory. Like, you know, mashallah, you drive a nice car. Okay? You know, the wife becomes like an addition. She becomes like an accessory.
Just interrupt you there.
Brother.
You're right in my 20s. I think pre-25, I'd say I was an accessory sort of guy. After 25, things changed for me significantly.
Look, people mature at different ages.
Absolutely,
you know?
yeah.
If you're in the occupied Palestinian territories at the moment,
Yes.
you're going to be a 13-year-old child who's not a child. Okay, you're going to have the qualities of rujula. You're going to have manhood because you've been forced to, because that's the environment that you're raised in, right? We live in I don't particularly care. This is going to be controversial. We live in an incredibly soft generation.
Absolutely,
now,
yeah.
right? You know, we moan and complain about really small things. So 20s, I would say, yeah, like an accessory. 30s, I think you come to a little bit of maturity, and you're seeking probably greater depth. You're seeking a connection. You're seeking something that's going to have the formula of something that's lasting. Also, from the family perspective, I can talk to you about a lot of restrictions, right? So I can talk to you about madhabiyya. I've spoken to sisters who are Hanafi, and they're like, "You're Shafi'i, I can't marry you."
Right.
Okay, which I thought was strange. I've engaged with sisters who are Shia, right, and that's something that is really I advise against any Sunni marrying, and vice versa. We're not compatible. Okay, they have a concept of what's known as zawaj muta'a, which is a temporary marriage.
Right.
Okay, which is a interesting topic as well, which I won't get into. But kind of in my 40s, I believe that I came to a strong understanding of who I am and what I need. But ultimately, when you are seeking, you have to be willing to compromise, and the ability to compromise is kind of achieved as you get older. Because you're not going to find everything that you want.
Absolutely.
Okay. So it's a question of, I'll quote Confucius here, because I think what Confucius is saying is incredibly beautiful. He said, "Better a diamond with a flaw than a pebble without." So if you find that which is precious, you're willing to accept it and take it on. Maybe not take it on is not the best word, but you'll accept it with all of its flaws because it's a diamond.
Yeah.
But a pebble, even if a pebble's flawless, right, it's still a worthless stone.
Thank you, Brother Fareed. Just on the Confucius quote, I do look for diamonds with flaws because no one's perfect, but I definitely don't look for pebbles. And I'm just going to make something that will relate to my audience. When I was a little younger, when I was in my early 20s, I had boys come in with a JD Sports accent. "Yo, fam, look how many things I've got. Forgive me if I haven't done the accent correctly." And they'll show me these girls, and I'm thinking, I wouldn't look at them twice, but you're looking at them and you're entertaining them, but you're not respecting them accordingly. You know, so my advice to them, well done. You're not actually a playboy, but you're taking advantage of these women, because what you should have done is empower those women and say, listen, these are the things you need to work on, and I need to work on. Let's move along. Anyway, that was just a side comment. Again, like I said, I'm going to use this famous quote. I'm going to be a bit more difficult here. 20s, 30s and 40s.
Yep.
So you told me 10 years you've been looking, so 35-ish,
Probably,
right?
yeah.
35-ish.
Maybe
so
more, on and off.
On and off, but 10 years.
Because you get exhausted by the process. You
I
have to
could
bear that in
imagine,
mind.
yeah.
So you're never going to be looking for 10 years relentlessly and endlessly.
Yeah.
You know?
So
bear that in mind.
35. Let's just use the 35 as a starting mark. So 35, what mistakes did you make?
Wow. How long have you got?
In a summary term, things that we can take, because I'm 30, right?
Yeah.
You know, I can learn from you, and there's a lot of people that can learn from you. Most people like your age are married.
Yeah. One of the mistakes I made was not actually speaking to my elders. You know, I want to quote to you my father, Allah yahfadhu. He said something to me, which I always remember when I was a young boy. He said to me, let me tell you what the difference between a fool and a wise man is. And I said, okay, what's the difference? He said, a fool learns from his own mistakes. A wise man learns from other people's mistakes. Now, if we become a people that can't even learn from our own mistakes, then we're lower and lesser than fools, aren't we? So one of the mistakes I made was I didn't really listen to my family. You know, marriage is a marriage of two families, right? So you have to really check the level of compatibility. I wasn't really thinking about any of those kind of things, right? I was just thinking about, I was drawn by what my eye was drawn to. There's also a quality in Islam, which I think is missing now amongst Muslims. We all naturally have what's known as a ghira, a natural jealousy. So nobody wants, you know, Mizan will tell you, like, he doesn't want some strange man looking at his wife. No. Okay. The opposite of the ghira is a quality that's known, and it's a very shameful quality. It's known as being a dayuth. Okay. Somebody who wants people to look at their wives, you know, and admire them and salivate over them.
I'm going to interrupt you there because you're making a very, very important point, and this is to my audience, because I'm not just doing this to become famous and popular. I'm not in that business. Particularly guys and girls that are a lot younger than me, perhaps they've got married in their early 20s, stayed away from haram. I respect that, by the way, very much so.
I do too.
Yeah. They're on TikTok and they're sharing videos of themselves cutting cake, and I get that you're very much in love with each other, and you want to share time and you want to show the world. There's two things that I think is wrong with that. Firstly, I don't think when you're younger, when you're in your early 20s, your brain hasn't developed yet. So I can say that because I was in my early 20s maybe 7-8 years ago. Now I'm 30 and I look back at myself as an early 20-year-old and I think I'm a little shit. Excuse my language. So when you're in your early 20s and you're sharing a stage with your wife on TikTok saying we're doing this and we're doing that, and he's buying me flowers and there's Bollywood music going off in the background and fireworks. Firstly, there's ayn, which means evil eye. People are giving you evil eye. Secondly, and this is the biggest problem here, the element of haya, which is an Arabic word, the element of self-respect and shame withers away, because I'm still from a generation, and if you ask my close pals and my mates and the people I associate with, we're very old school men. We're from conservative backgrounds, and to be fair, and I'll say it, I'm a council estate boy. I may not speak like one or sound like one, but I have council estate morals and values with the adoption of the silly, entrenched culture and British. So when a man like me looks at it, or looks at a little kid on TikTok with his newly found bride, and they're happy and stuff like that, I'm not going to swear at you because you don't know any better, but I'm fearful of it. Because people are going to give you evil eye and people are going to lose respect for you. And I don't want that for my people in my community. It's very important. So guys in your early 20s, particularly in your early 20s, I commend that you're getting married and keeping it halal. We promote that from our religion. We double down it with our cultures. But it's very important that you don't go on TikTok and give your family shame, give yourself shame, which is more important, and put your wife on the firing line. Because, you know, when I get married, inshallah, if anyone talks bad about my wife, it's a declaration of war. And that's what I mean. That's the sort of generation I'm from. So just to prevent yourself, I'm not having a go at you. You can do what you like. But from an older person telling a younger person, I'll tell my younger cousins and kids growing up, you know, that's the upbringing that we give them. You're not going to go on TikTok and make Bollywood movies and share your good things, your good memories, because people give you evil eye. And then all of a sudden you'll see that there's problems within your marriage. Just that. Back to Brother Fareed.
Brother.
Sorry, I interrupted there because I felt like that was a very important point to make. If you carry on with what you were saying.
Yeah, so we were talking about
The youth and yeah.
So the youth is a person who has absolutely no ghira for his wife. Okay, and I think we're living in that age. Look, we need to be honest with ourselves, right? We are, people who are Muslim with Muslim identity, okay, who have been brought up in the West, and the Western world has, let's say, temptations. Right?
Absolutely, yeah.
It has temptations, and it's coming from a different paradigm to our own, right? So we're trying to make sense of the world. Okay, if you look at our parents and grandparents' generation, look at how marriage was for them, right? It was quite common to meet your bride on the wedding day, right? To have your first look on the wedding day, but yet you see that they held down very successful marriages, right? I think a part of the problem today is choice. Right? When you're bombarded with choice, like let's say you wake up every morning, right, and the only thing you can eat is Kellogg's Crunchy Nut cornflakes.
Very nice.
Yeah, I love it myself, right? So, right, you just know what to pour into your cereal bowl. Right? But when you're given so much choice, should I have toast? Should I have scrambled eggs? Should I have this? Should I have that? It's It's difficult, and I think what my friends used to really make fun of me for not being married. Okay, and one of the things they used to say to me was like, "Man, just take the plunge. Don't matter, anyone, right? Just get married and get divorced. It doesn't matter, right?" So I used to get into those kind of discussions. But let me tell you one of the dangers, and this is especially for your audience, right? When you get older, you get into a particular kind of mindset, right? And the mindset is this: man, I've waited for so long. I'm not settling now, right? So whoever you're expecting to come along now has to be great.
Perfect.
Great. Yeah. Forget the Confucius saying about the diamond with the flaws. Yeah. You want a flawless diamond now, right? Because I waited for so long.
Because you sacrificed.
Yeah, man, I waited for so long. Look, I'm 35.
Yeah.
Especially with like sisters, right? Because they spend a lot of time. Building their careers. They don't have dependency on men because they've seen a lot of things from previous generations, and they're not really pleased with how that's sort of working. And I said something. I was actually quoting a scholar from America when I said that today what you find is that you have a generation of sisters that are feminists with a sprinkling of Islam on top.
You mentioned that in the first episode.
Yeah, I did, right? Yeah. So, like Islam is your measurement, right? And when you start going down this route of like taking Western liberal ideas and feminism and all these kind of things, because one of the things for me that with feminism is that it negates the inherent differences between men and women.
That's going to be a topic on a different episode.
It doesn't go into that. But people also have a perception, oh, you got to that age, so you must be fussy. Being fussy for the right reasons is okay, but hand on my heart, there is an element of being fussy as well, yes. Because once you get to a particular age, it's like, nah, I'm not settling with that now.
Yeah.
And look, speak to people who are older, and this is what you'll find. You'll find that initially their parents say stuff like, you have to marry within your same caste. I come from a hybrid kind of cultural background. I don't have a caste system where I'm from, right? But you have to marry within your same caste, and then it's like, okay, you're a little bit older now. Okay, not same caste, same country. Okay, and then the same country gets negated as long as the person's Muslim. Yeah. So what happens is, from your family's perspective, the barriers are being knocked, but from your own perspective, the filtering becomes greater. So you're dealing with this kind of paradox.
Wow, absolutely. That's a very good paradox. That was a very good overview. Tell us, in your because you're a man, and I'm going to assume and presume you're a man that may have had a past, but you adhere to what's right and what's wrong. So you keep yourself chaste. How do you keep yourself chaste? So more so women that are in the mid-30s and late 30s. And by the way, our society, our particular society, they look down on them. They may call them spinsters, or no one wants them anymore. And it's very, very offensive. And it's very, very sad because that woman values herself. Now, like you said, the moment you mentioned the plunge, and you didn't take the plunge, and I respect you highly for that. I respect you highly for that, because there are men that I know and I've heard of that have taken the plunge. It didn't last a year. It didn't last a year, and they're back on the market again. But what they've done is divorce, and I'll have a separate episode on divorce. Divorce is there to be used as last resort. It's a necessary tool. It's an apparatus that should be used if you are being oppressed. But divorce has ramifications. It will psychologically mess you up and the woman up. And not just that, because we marry when you said earlier on, family, it's a family v family union.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't just affect you individually, it affects your mum, it affects your dad, it affects your siblings.
Yes.
So there's massive risk and burden there as well. So back to my point here. As a 35-year-old man that kept it halal, isn't finding the right one. In terms of self-improvement,
Yeah.
whilst you're finding the love of your life,
Yeah.
what did you do to keep yourself pure and protect yourself and improve yourself? Because it might be that you went to the gym, hit the weights to make yourself look better looking, or you did some inner self work, you became a nicer person, so on and so forth. If you can just delve into that.
Yeah, that's a good question, right? And I can't give you anything specific, but all I can tell you is how I live my life.
Okay.
So I was, learning about Islam. I was learning the Western sciences at the same time. I studied a bit of philosophy, sociology, psychology. My background is in physics. So I was just living, because what you can't do is, when you're seeking marriage, you can't let everything else come to a standstill. Okay, and the answer to your question is going to be different to every person. They're going to find whatever they need to find, but ultimately, they're all distractions. They're all distractions, because we're not created to exist alone, right? So until you find your spouse, there's going to be a feeling of loneliness, right? And the thing with the loneliness is that it can't be filled with anything apart from a spouse.
So how do you fill that void until you find your spouse, or your spouse comes to you?
You live your life. You live your life. It's funny. I was talking to a friend of mine who's been married for 20 odd years, and he was saying to me, I remember he was like, bro, before you get married, man, just do everything you can. Like, if you want to study this, you want to do that, do it, right? Because you won't have time when you're married.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so that was his advice. I think you just have to exist and live and do your utmost to try and search and find. See, the thing with my fiance, right, is that she's distinguished from every other person I've known previously for many reasons. Firstly, she didn't play any games. So what you see is what you get. There's a quality of sidq in our religion, of keeping the tongue and the heart in sync with each other. So whatever you feel is articulated upon your tongue, with filters.
We definitely don't have that in our generation.
With filters on occasions, right? So
we definitely don't have that.
The human being is not inclined towards nifaq.
Which is what does that mean?
Which is hypocrisy, right?
Okay.
So nifaq is articulating words upon the tongue that which the heart doesn't hold to be true.
Okay.
Right. So Allah says that He didn't create any man with two hearts, and one of the meanings for that is that we're not naturally inclined towards hypocrisy. Right. So my fiance, that's one of the things I would say that distinguishes her. She's very honest, very straightforward. Doesn't play any games. If she's upset, I know she's upset. If she's happy, I know she's happy. One of the things also in the early stages, we call it courting and whatnot, right? But one of the early stages that women like to be chased. So they can induce things in you to try and produce you to do that. I was talking to one of my cousins, and she said as soon as the husband realized that she was interested, he just backed off. She didn't like that because she wanted to be chased until the wedding day. So I didn't have to go through any of these kind of trivial mundane.
Are they trivial?
Mundane. Look, man, when you're 45, they are.
Okay, fair enough.
When you're 25,
it's a different thing. Yeah.
But when you're 45 and you're just looking to settle, and inshallah have children and progress your life, because none of us know how long we're going to live.
That's absolutely true.
So true.
I've
got 3 questions for you. Quick fire questions before I move on
I'll try and be
to
quick, yeah.
my esteemed guest Mizan.
Habibi Mizan, yes.
Your fiance now.
Yes.
May Allah put mercy, happiness,
Allahumma ameen.
and give you lots of children. Ameen. Firstly, quickly, so you've looked for 10 years.
Yep.
You've met very different types of women.
Yep.
And you've explained to me why you said no to them, and perhaps they said no to you. You might not be James Bond. But what is the compromises that you have made? Firstly, that's the first question. Second question is, you've touched upon it a little bit here already, the key attributes that made you say yes to your fiance.
Yep.
And thirdly, what advice would you give men going forward looking for a spouse? What sort of questions should they ask?
Right, go back to the first question quickly. Just fire off the first question again.
Yeah. So
what compromises did I make?
Yeah.
Right. This is, I don't want to make your audience throw up, right? But alhamdulillah, I had to make no compromises with my fiance.
Mashallah.
Because,
big up.
But who knows? Because when you're married, things change,
Yeah.
right? But alhamdulillah, I ask Allah to fill the union with barakah.
Ameen.
And put sakina, because litaskunu ilayha. Allah says, that you may dwell in peace and tranquility. I had to make no compromises.
Okay.
Because
Wow.
she's definitely worth the wait for me, Again, I don't want to make people throw up, but
Wow.
but yeah, I'd made no compromises. She blasted everything in my past into oblivion. She's very straightforward, honest. She's got an academic background, so we could speak quite freely.
Sure.
So nothing. But if you were to ask me 5 years into marriage,
That may change.
because marriage is going to be
So
compromised.
you've almost.
What was the second question?
You've addressed the second question. So what are the qualities that made you take the plunge, so to speak?
Look, I'll say something about that, right? And very quickly, because I spoke to a lot of my married friends, right? And sometimes the first meeting isn't great. So when I first met my fiance, it was like, I don't know about this. And for her, it was the same. I don't know about this. But you have to keep going, man. Look, these apps and stuff, right?
Right.
How does that work in real life? You see someone's picture and you go, no, you go, yes. If you met someone face to face, would you do that? Would you go, sorry, I'm just walk off? You wouldn't do that.
No.
Right? So it's a really cold place, these apps and stuff,
No,
right?
I don't think. I mean, they work for some people, but it's very artificial. I'm an old school
You're taking
romantic.
you've got a moment in time. You've got a 2-dimensional image of someone, okay, captured in time. There are 3-dimensional reality and more, okay. So that's the answer. That's the answer to that. What was the third question?
The third question is, what advice would you give men that are looking for a spouse? What sort of questions should they ask
Okay, do you listen?
before they're dazzled?
Okay, right. We can't get away from the fact that men are more drawn to what's physical. Can't get away from that, right? So look at her and see if she's attractive to you. And likewise for her, she has to look at you and find you attractive. Okay? Do your background checks. What I would say is, when you're getting to know someone, you get to know them quite organically. You don't need to turn up, right? Like a job interview and have a list of questions. Okay, what caste are you from? How much money do you earn? You don't need to do
Sound
any-
like an accountant.
You don't need to do that. Just interact. Interact, and you get to know them quite organically. And inshallah, And the other thing is, and I mentioned this previously, is look, put your trust in Allah. Pray istikhara. You meet them, but don't be hasty with your istikhara. Okay, let it unfold. Because if it's good for you, it will unfold in a good way. That's one of the things that my fiance and I did regularly. We prayed a lot of istikhara. So even if there's any kind of disagreements or anything, istikhara, and Allah, Allah is the one who facilitates.
Absolutely.
So that's the answer.
MashaAllah.
Thank you, Brother Fareed. That was very insightful. Thank you for sharing your personal details. I genuinely appreciate it. Hopefully,
It was vague. 'Cause I don't want to get into too much.
It was vague, but I'm sure I took some advice from that, and my audience will take some advice from it. So you found the love of your life. Alhamdulillah. Good for you. No adjustments, quickly, before I move on. No adjustments. You didn't make any adjustments.
I mean, this particular thing she likes, but I won't get into that, right? I'm more of a late afternoon, evening person. She's more of a morning person. So,
Right.
so yeah. And we've spoken
So
about...
superficial adjustments.
Listen,
Nothing.
we've spoken about marriage and her wanting to do, activities in the daytime and stuff. And yeah, I'm going to have to, do that in marriage. So I've been able to fob her off temporarily and say, yeah, after marriage. And inshallah, I will keep my word.
Thank you, Brother Fareed. Now, the main guest that I've brought on, you've got 20, 30 years of facilitating and brokering marriages.
Yeah.
If you just quickly introduce yourself, and just to add credibility to my guest and the audience, just a few things about what you studied, what you do for a living. Keep it vague. I don't need to
vague.
know.
I'm Mizan. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum. Right, Bismillah. So I'm a contractor, so I do work in the industry. I am part of a not-for-profit, and one of the projects of the not-for-profit was a matrimonial service, which I do host from time to time. There's a couple of us. And so we've been running it for the last 20 years, over 20 years. So very, very briefly, because of time, and you want to crack on with the questions. It's essentially for your audience. You could say we call it Muslim marriage events. But another word to say is probably halal speed dating, if you want to call it that. If you want to call it that, halal introductions. There's loads of these words or sort of thing, but they're fundamentally the same thing. You're looking for someone in a very small space of time framework with the purpose of marriage. But we have other objectives as well when we do organize these events. Very quickly, history behind it. We used to have gatherings people used to come, and as part of the gatherings, we used to have talks, lectures, seminars. We also started organizing matrimonials through in our gatherings. We started off with a database and matchmaking, and we realized people just can't be bothered with that sort of thing. People wanted something, a structured thing where they could meet people. If I want to come to a lecture, I want to go to a lecture, right? If I want to come to something more purpose, I said, okay, fine. How do we resolve this? So we, I think it was a bit organic, but we had a conference. Also, the inspiration came from, similar to other communities as well. There's no different. Really, the real inspiration came from the Jewish community, because the Jewish community had a lot of similar issues, whereby they're not supposed to be doing dating, and different types of Jewish folks, right? So the more Orthodox folks said, look, you guys are more or less, the same as us in terms of your, in social interactions. You just got to do what we're going to do. We're just going to have a kosher sort of event with a structure, and hopefully that should lead to, courtship, and courtship would lead to marriage. So so the inspiration really came from them, right? In terms of the idea, which is we just make it halalify it, right? Just put a Muslim tag. That's it, right. And then that's it. And then over the years, that grew and grew and grew. It really. So we started off with an event, a public event, the Muslim marriage dilemma. This is back in 1990 something. So we had debates, we had discussions with more imams, counselors, community activists, and people were just airing their views. And they said, we all want something. We want a structured way of doing things.
Tangible. Tell me something about the audience or your customers, so to speak,
so
that came through the door.
Yeah. So over the last 20 odd years, we've had nearly probably over 250,000 people. We've had around up to 16,000 marriages all over the world, not just the UK, because it just grew. It's just crazy. I mean, to some extent, I always wondered, did I open up a Pandora's box with this sort of nightmare? Because, it's just taking up a lot of my time, sucking in. I became, not only that, people felt that I was a marriage counselor, coach, sheikh, their personal friend. It was like, it was weird. It was really, and sometimes I felt like am I still a Muslim still a black who taps a heel on the other extreme, or am I, and sometimes I felt like, oh my God, what am I doing? It feels like, a blind date.
What were you preventing them from?
Look, fundamentally, the purpose of these events, it's an event structure. Okay, right. The fundamental thing we wanted to achieve was conversations with the opposite gender. We wanted communications, people to reflect back on their communication skills, which we felt there was a deficit in people. And finally, more importantly, I think part of the problem is, remember, this is late 1990s, early noughties. We've been impacted by all sorts of, programs and ideas from Friends, Sex in the City, Ali McBeal, all these sort of spinstery sort of thing. And at the same time, the Muslim community was coming out, right? Opening up. You had a large number of emerging professionals. They couldn't go to the pub and the club.
So they came to your thing instead?
Because at the end of the day, look, it's human nature, it's human being. People want someone. Why do you think people go to pubs and clubs? People go to pubs. They go, social pubs are slightly different because it's predicated on the culture here. But nightclubs, fundamentally, it's about pulling. Do you want to?
But not spouses pulling.
No, I mean,
perhaps.
Essentially, it's the same. If you meet someone in a nightclub, you court with them, and eventually it might turn up to be marriage. You never know. But the point is, you want to meet someone in the opposite gender according to your values, right? Yeah. Traditions and values. So so going back to your question about, so over the years, it's just like grew, and then we had copycats. From psychopathic auntie G's trying to do the same thing to, guys. We had psychotic, women who couldn't find spouses, so they just started to organise their own events. Or guys as well. A couple of guys coming together. They're saying, perverts basically.
Perverts, okay.
Perverts, but also at the same time, we're dealing with community in transition. Remember, we're going from a traditional community to a society, to a community which is struggling with modernity, individualism, ignorance of religion and their values, and so on. So we're dealing with look, in 3 hours, we're trying to deal with a community, right, of 50, 60, 70 years of issues. Right? It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Absolute nightmare.
What are the issues quickly?
And so, you know, when Fareed was talking about his own personal thing, you know, and he's spot on. Is, you know, look, because at his age, he's going to make certain expectations, but he's also been through life, you see? And so the problem with our events was when we started off all Muslims, right? First couple of years. That didn't work. You had to categorize it according to age differences, to people's professions to some extent, which was another, you know, problem. According to ethnicities, because again, the community was far more less religiously centered. It was more racially centered. And as they became more Islamized, they became more religious. But the problem was, what we found over the years. People go back to their primordial state, which is, and it's interesting what he said. As Fareed said, as he got older, as he got wiser, his expectations changed. And he met many ladies over the years. What he was expecting when in his early 30s is very different to what is now, you know? And it makes sense, absolutely, because he's experiencing life. He's experiencing manhood, emotion, maturity, blah, blah, blah. What we found, the Muslim community, no different from the wider community. They're all the same, whether it's Indian, Hindus or Sikhs or even Jews.
South Asian,
but all the same.
All the same, okay? Right.
But the Muslim community had particular problems.
What are the problems?
The particular problems were everyone keeping going, this is not the traditional way of doing things. Listen. The traditional way of things, you're right. Traditionally speaking, you would do X, Y, Z. You would marry, you know, what your parents find you, something like that. But part of the problem is, you see, Muslims don't understand the modern world. They're in denial of the modern world. They want to run away from it, but at the same time, they want the best of the modern world. You know, when they want to make all the money and live the bling culture, okay? And no shame about it, you know? On the other extreme, they want to be ultra-conservative, traditional, for the sake of it, right? Not to be progressively conservative, you know, to change not change your values, but update them, you know, to reality. So what we found was people say, I don't want to come to the event, but, you know, the person should choose me. Okay, I don't know who you are. What are you? What are you? Human or what? What are you? We would find people with PhDs, but they want someone who wants to cook, clean 24/7. You know, we have bankers who just fundamentally want a pretty, you know, bimbo. You know, we have you know, PhD ladies who've got lots of PhDs. They're the most super intelligent in the world. For fundamentally, you know, they'll talk about they want intellectual conversations. When you boil down to it, really stripped away from all the, you know, surfaces, they just want a guy with loads of money. You know, they don't want to live with the in-laws. They don't want to cook. They want to be constantly pampered. All this nonsense, you know. So what we found, and I'm finding, and I'm still learning myself. Remember, I've been married. You know, I've got children, and also remember, I've taken on this responsibility, right? It's as an accident. So I thought when I set up these matrimonial events, I was speaking to my colleague and saying, look, no. And we're also at the same time, remember, religious scholars weren't ready for this. So some religious scholars were saying, this is haram, how dare you, you know. So on the one hand, we were getting fatwas saying it's not allowed. On the other hand, we have the communities at various different levels. So certain ethnic communities had different issues. So Fareed is from, if I recall, Sri Lankan community, but Yemenis background, right? So they have lots of different issues from the dominant community who are Pakistani and Bengali, right? Here we have an oversupply of Bengali, Pakistani, Indian girl. True. That community is so small. So his pool of looking from his own community is tiny.
2 million.
Right? Yeah. Very, very small. And also remember their cultural experiences and their diaspora community have a complete different experience from the Bengalis and Pakistanis and so on. So they tend to be a bit more relaxed, chilled, they're more globalized.
And we're not.
No, we're not, because we see, because remember when Islam, and again, this goes back to the history of Islam, how Islam came into the region for hundreds of years, and that imprinted. So, for example, Pakistani folks would be more temperament, because again, it depends what part of Pakistan. If they're in the mountains, they're harsher, more tougher, whereas Bengalis, we're a river society. So we tend to be a bit more chilled out in certain things. And that carries through in people's mindsets when they're looking for spouses, and also living in postmodern societies. In Britain, you have Ally McBeal, Sex in the City, what's it called, what's that,
Fraser,
what's that high school thing program?
What, Friends?
Not Friends, there's another one, that
High
school,
You're talking to people who won't know these things, by the way.
High school what?
high school something, you understand? And then you got the music. Then you got, it depends if you like what music genre you want. All that impacts people.
It's an explosion.
It's an explosion because you have to understand. People think Muslim. Automatically, they think religious. No. Everyone is at different levels. Everyone is at different levels.
Absolutely.
And I used to think that as well. I used to be very harsh and thinking, if you're a Muslim, you should be doing this. Then I realized, hang on, over the years, it's just a human being first, man. I've got to be very careful not to hurt their hearts, not to hurt their religious sensibilities. They come from broken families or families with lots of issues, lots of complications. It's like a story in itself. It's a universe. It opened up my eyes. So I was not prepared for this. It was very stressful, and it still is very stressful. Continue to doing it because now I enjoy it. I tell you what, I've accepted because Allah has given me this tawfiq and this, responsibility. I realize, look, maybe God has given me this responsibility, and people are vulnerable. When they come to you, they're in the most vulnerable situation because it's the most powerful thing, the intimate sort of insight. So over the years, we decided to segregate it according to, different categories. Over 30s, under 30s, divorced, widowed, converts, Bengali, Pakistani. We even done Sri Lankan one. Right? Yeah, we've done it many times. We did African and Caribbean, and that caused another problem because folks from Africa, West Africa, couldn't stand people from East Africa.
Did they not?
And then West Africans hated the Caribbeans,
and vice versa.
And vice versa. And I was just going round and round. And then we had women in their 30s, but the problem was you had loads of women in their 40s, and then you had guys in their 60s.
60s.
Now we get guys in their 60s coming because
Whoa, 60s.
Yeah. We get loads of guys now because you're getting aunties and uncles who just stood look, this is not the beginning now. This I'm talking about now, recently. We're getting a lot of silver age divorcees who've stood for their marriage for 20 years. Their children are now, established, university, they're gone and moving their life. And it's as I say, so I'm dealing with a nightmare. And then I used to have scholars who used to give me fatwas. Now they're the same with scholars who are looking for spouses themselves or for, beyond just monogamy.
I'm going to navigate this a bit further. Firstly, so you've seen the 20-year difference, the radical change. So my first question is this.
Okay.
How has feminism, the explosion of feminism impacted how people look, and it has affected both men and women?
Absolutely right.
Secondly, is there a decline of our civilization?
Yeah. So I think we need to structure it like this. Look, very important, which I've said to people out there. And I've learned a lot about relationships, history of marriage. I've had to do a lot of research myself because our scholars, they don't know the reality of the context of the situation because it's not something they're traditionally taught. You see, they come from traditional societies.
So we haven't got empiricists.
We've got no evidence out there. Look, remember, there's very little research on this area, very little, not only research, very little studying because you see, look, for up until the 1960s, right? 60s and 70s. I'm talking about the West, right? And for the Muslims, up until probably mid-2000s, for the Muslim world and Muslims, whether Western minorities or not. Most of civilization, societies and human beings, you got married from the local village, from the local person, and most likely your cousin. Okay, most likely. As much as people may not like it, look, you got the royal family, which is essentially cousin marriages. The king of Russia, the queen of but they're all cousin marriages. And if you want to dig deeper, it's first cousin. So the Daily Mail can shut up in terms of Muslims marrying first cousins. You're all inbred. I don't. I'm sorry if I'm going to be very blunt
No, it's
about
fine.
it.
Please be.
So look, then you had the other thing after World War II. You had the sexual liberalization movements in the 60s, and also you had, second wave feminism. Okay, you had first wave feminism, which was very interesting, and we have to acknowledge that there were some issues back then in first wave feminism, which we're addressing. Then second wave feminism combined with the pill. Right, took things in a different way because it became women had autonomy. It's called in academic language. They had choice and autonomy. But you don't see the impact of all of these policies immediately. You see it 20, 30 years later. Right.
Tell me the impacts.
So the impact now. So fast forward. The impact became more. So during the 80s, we had both sides of the pond. In the Anglo-Saxon world and generally the Western world, you had neoliberalism as the economic model, right? That took with the loss of religion, that took the individualism on steroids. Okay, the impact of the pill, sexual liberalization movement, and all of these other movements, sexual liberalization and feminism, added up in the 1990s. Okay, and now you come into the internet generation. You're seeing the impact. Broken individualistic societies. Muslims grew up in this. You see, never ever think that Muslims are alien. Look at that Gora, ha ha ha. Look at that Kala, ha ha ha. They were the first people to be impacted. You see, right? Then so the Muslims came of age, the professional generation, in the early noughties. Okay, and they didn't realize they inhibited a lot of these. They were impacted by these ideas, right?
So feminism, sexual liberalization.
But these came via the schools, via the music, via the films,
so pop, hip hop.
And then you had the ideological sort of folks, and political parties as well. Some extreme elements within them, and that all mishmash. For us, remember, we're just coming out as a struggling community, trying to find our feet.
Yep.
Right? So early noughties, people said, okay, now we have permission. Go and find your own spouse. Where? So some people go to marriage events. This is where some people had matrimonial sites. Some of it's good, some of it was bad experience. So these ideas of people going, it's not
But
new.
it wasn't all people in the noughties. It was the more liberal type that went. The conservatives still went through.
You had both. So I know we've discussed this before, but this is misnomer that only liberal types. No, because you see, an educated Muslim woman knew that she had choice, so she went on to these early Muslim dating sites, marriage sites. She came to these events. She found religion as an empowerment. The ones who were more conservative in terms of religious practice, men, wouldn't come that much. But they were coming. Some would come. And so then you had these dating sites. But what really took it to the next level?
Please tell me.
Next level was social media and apps. Because you see, at least with a website, you had to go to a desktop or a laptop, right? When you have social media... you're looking for a spouse, or you're speaking to your potential, lover, right, girlfriend, or whatever you say, in the toilet or in the bath.
Well, you could do, technically. Yeah.
Well, they do. People do.
Okay,
People do.
right.
People have, people. We know people do. A lot of people do. You could take it anywhere. On the plane, to your work, you're booking your holiday at work, but really you look at the multitasking, you're looking for a spouse, a partner. We all know people do that, right? So that took it to a level. As Fareed correctly said, dating, marriage, relationship became a marketplace. So remember, you're no longer traditional. You are now facing all these postmodern ideas, and at that, the marketplace exploded. The marketplace exploded.
Too much choice.
You had not only choice, it also impacted your fetish. You could possibly, I'm a 5'3" guy, right? I'm not a tall guy. Okay? Bengali heritage, etc., etc., etc. First time in my life, think of this, first time in any human being, whatever background you're from, you could potentially look for someone who's a woman who's 6'5", blonde, right, from Scandinavia, because if you've been watching porn, right, for example, right, or you've been watching you've been watching some song, right, and you like that dancer, and you think all women who look like that. Do you understand what I'm trying?
Yeah, I understand.
Porn
Yeah.
impacts people.
It does, yeah.
Right? Because you take it in, you internalize it, you think, oh my God, beautiful woman. That's what I want. Well, how's that going to get access to? I'm going to get access to that. I got it on my phone. No one's going to know me. I'm not going to be in an internet cafe surfing and on someone looking at me. I've got it on my phone. I can choose blonde hair, tall, short, and now you have multiple issues, right? Not only choice smashing at you, cultural value smashing at you, you also have biology smashing at you. Because at the end of the day, for example, a lot of women who are completely deluded nowadays, modern women.
Why are they deluded?
No, for example, there's only a certain percentage of society who are 6 foot in every single community.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? Here you have on your fingertips. Remember, you would marry your local village from your local person, right?
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
And most likely it's your cousin.
Well, maybe
For
30 years ago.
for thousands
1,000
of
years, okay,
human beings. This is not about religion here. For thousands of years, okay? Very rarely you see, people don't realize the elite had choice of societies. But most of the elite in society, if you're a king or sultan or some, lord, Lord XYZ, Lord Viscount of XYZ or Baroness of this person, most likely, Pride and Prejudice, Mr. Darcy and these sort of, this is the elite. This sort of stuff these people would most likely marry, not for love.
No.
The concept of love in a marriage came in the 60s and 70s. Most of civilization and human beings got married because it's a business transaction.
Survival.
You got money, you're a viscount, I'm going to go up. Hypergamy, right? Yeah, it benefits my, lineage,
yeah.
and also I can get some business contracts of it. Oh, I'm going to marry you because I need to marry you to keep my lordship or to keep my political, I've got to be the king, right?
And that trickles down because all our societies have it,
yeah. I mean, King Charles could have married Diana. He could have married Camilla, right? He had to marry someone of a hierarchical sort of thing,
Absolutely, yeah.
As much as the Daily Mirror and the Times get very thingy about it, they don't like it, but let's put it down on paper. That's what it was, At the
Back
end
to
of
our South Asian community. Go on.
Back to the South Asian community is something very, very problematic. So remember, when the British ruled the South Asia, they brought Anglican Victorian values into our understanding of sexuality and so on. So remember, when the British ruled for a couple of 100 years, we internalized that. Just because we're Muslims, remember the culture, we internalize it. The dogma is always going to be the same. You can't do this, halal and haram, blah, blah, blah. But the dogma, and then when we came over here to rebuild the countries, we internalized that as well. So we internalized Victorian Anglican, prudishness. We've internalized, because Islamic ideas of sexuality and relationships, and so it's far more fluid than people like to think. Obviously, within the bounds
We're
of
still
Sharia.
prudish.
Yeah, I mean, prudish in the sense of, listen, when we go down the whole issue of, intimacy, talking about intimacy, I'm talking Victorian prudish was about, it was like it's a bad thing. It's a bad thing.
It's still a bad thing in our culture, though.
No, but that's a cultural thing, right? Islamically, no, it's an act of worship. It's beautiful. There's barakah in it.
No,
and
I get that. So I get that. But what I'm saying is,
but that idea was part of when British ruled. So when we came over
Fast forward 21st century.
21st century, we've suffered from that. So on the one hand, we've got ideas from porn, music, Victorian prudish at home, what Islam is saying one thing. Right. Our brains are all over the place.
That's true, yeah.
You see? So now apps, as I said, put it on steroids, too much choice, give you access. Also, the other thing is, our lifestyles are very our bodies are built for the outdoor, not for sedentary sort of in the office to clicking, right?
Yep.
You know, men are hunter-gatherers for thousands of years.
Absolutely.
Women are childbearers. Yes.
Can I just say one thing? That's a very, very important thing that you just said there, because I hear various anecdotes from people that I know and, associates.
Yeah.
And Isa, this is actually quite laughable. You said men are hunter-gatherers. You know what's happening in our society now?
Yeah.
The wife will tell the man, you can't go out after 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. Now, when I hear that, I laugh my head off, and most of my friends will laugh their heads off. But there are some men that aren't allowed to go out after 8 o'clock. Or if they're out, they're seen as bad husbands.
Yeah.
It's within our inherent nature to be out and about. I grew up in a council estate. I was out like Will Smith on Bel Air, kicking ball. He was playing basketball, I was kicking ball and messing around with my mates.
Yeah.
Now, you can't tell a man to stay at home.
Absolutely.
We're physiologically different.
Yeah, because again, there's social conditioning going here. You have the individual lady in question who seems to be insecure about her man going out.
A lot of men are staying at home and deleting their numbers.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, because they're look, if you. We're gonna talk about this. It's an important why.
Very important.
Very important. Now we fast forward. This is the mess we have. We have the biggest mess in society. Look, fundamentally, what builds a civilization, a society, is marriage.
Yep.
That's the fundamental building blocks of any human civilization. Forget about Muslimness, okay? Our religion is beautiful because it's inherently primordial, because it understands the reality of humans and tribes and civilizations, and it fits in perfectly. The problem with Western civilization and how Western liberalism allowed for certain ideas, like where feminism has gone now to the other extreme, right, of where it's no longer about equality. It's more than equality. It's an ideological hatred of men, right? Let's not beat behind the bush about that. That's reality. Where at the same time their obsession, they don't understand as that's the reason why you have the phenomenon of Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson was a nobody. He didn't come out of a vacuum. He came out of a reality of a reaction to feminism. As much as politicians don't like him, at the end of the day, he has massive followings, right? Millions of people following him.
So how has this explosion and this crisis, as you say, affect our communities?
So our community has been impacted. Remember, we are a community who are work in progress. We're in transitional period at the moment. We're not feeted our ground in the West. And now we're not even feeted anywhere. Right? We haven't got foot anywhere. Forget about Muslim world is even worse, because so the moment you accept modernity, the reality is modernity has different types of realities. You have, you could have, so we have hyper modernity liberalism at the moment, and it's everywhere in the Muslim world as well.
And how does that manifest in how a woman interacts with a man and vice versa?
Because it's when you have too much. Look, the nature of human being is not to be given too much choice. Okay, most civilizations never had that much choice. So we have more choice than any other human being in history. Think about it. So when the brother said, I'm not picking on him, but he's seen so many women, up into him, and he started late as well. People need to understand. On the one hand, I can understand why he had to go through that, because he's from a particular small community. Right? He doesn't know how Bengali women work, or Pakistani women work, or converts and so on. So because he's probably smaller, right? Having said that, but at the same time, I am critical of him, right? Not him as an individual. It's sad that he had to go through to see so many women, right? It means that as a human being, as a man, right? The turmoil he had to do to go through that is not natural for him. That's not natural for a human being and a man.
I will let you come in. I will let you come in.
I am, and at the same time, I do feel, maybe at some point in his period of his life, he wasn't sure, or he was going through that. Because again, he said it himself, right? He didn't have, at the beginning of his life, he wasn't sure, and he went through different phases. Yeah. So this idea of Muslims didn't get education about relationship. Because remember, most society, it's given. The birds and the bees and blah, blah, blah. And this, in society, you had the old aunties. And remember, as he said, what did he say? When you get married, it's about two families coming together.
Absolutely.
The families, the aunties, the uncles, the grandparents. We don't have that in the UK.
Well, we do in our
do
culture.
now.
We
We
do
do
in our
now. My
culture.
mum and dad are like great grandparents or grandparents, right? Yeah. But if you were to ask that question 30 years ago, no, they were the parents. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So a lot of the millennials now, not millennials, a lot of the generation, what is it, Z?
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
Z,
So
yeah.
generation,
Z, yeah.
so generation X, my generation, we were the, how shall I say, test bed. All right, the test bed. Then you had the millennials who are struggling now, who are essentially the lost, one of the lost causes, right? Lost causes at the moment. And now you have Generation Y, who are now going to be, unfortunately, who are going to be mentally, they'll have to be, there's going to be a lot of bandage done to them, to
So
these people.
I'm going to come in here. I've got a quick fire 3 questions for
Very
you before I
good,
move back
quickly,
to Fareed.
yeah.
Firstly, are your events successful?
Yeah.
So that's the first question.
Yep.
The second question is, why don't we know what we want?
Yep.
And thirdly, how do you know, as a married man with
Yep.
several kids,
Yep.
Allah Mubarak,
Thank you.
how do we as men, single men or young men or, married, very early stage marriage, how do we understand women? When do we really understand women and vice versa?
Okay, so very quickly, events, look, very important, even though it's not a numbers game. I don't like quoting these numbers,
Right.
okay? They are anecdotal in the sense we have done a calculation, we do add,
Sure.
but there's plus minus, so to speak, right? The problem, look, it's not a numbers game, okay? The issue is that we've had to do this. Our events are so popular and big, and there's so many.
Are they successful?
I don't want it to be successful.
You don't want it to be successful.
No.
So you're presiding over this, but you don't want it to work.
No, because this is damage limitations I'm doing. I don't want people
So
to
this is a
come.
bandage?
It's a bandage. It's the more people, more events there are. It means the more you accepted individualism and materialism and a selfish, narcissist, egoistic society structure. It should be really the communitarian approach. Look, you should be able to go to your local mosque in a Jummah khutbah and saying, Imam Saab, come around my house. This is who I am. This is my CV. If you know someone, let me know. They should be able to come around your house, eat, have a dawat, right, with your Imam Saab and the lady and the man. That's much better. Okay, you don't have to pay epoxy price at my event, right? You don't have to come go through the process.
Very candid.
It's traumatic because 3 hours. I can't solve their
Traumas.
Lots of issues. They have some people have got not only confidence issues, they've got issues of they're not happy with their physical appearance because society is constantly bling bling. You got to look the most. This is the Kim Kardashian hijabi look. Or this is the red pill Muslim. Big. What is it called? Fast cars, bling bling, Dubai.
Okay, I've seen that. Yeah.
Look, we're Muslims. We're in Dubai with our big, biceps, and we're doing halal. All that. It's just nonsense.
Just quickly, I've just got...
So then number 2,
I've-
so success.
Yeah.
And then the second thing was what?
So the first thing was success. Second thing was, how would we, as men and women, how do we understand each other?
Right. I think this is rewind. The question is, we have to understand ourselves first. Our relationship with Allah first and our Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right? Before anything else.
Right.
You see, the problem is Muslims don't understand our tradition, our intellectual heritage, our spiritual tradition is a cosmological tradition, meaning we have mind, body, and soul. It's not like this new age nonsense, wellness, coach, and all of this. You got to need. There's some goodness in it, right? It's like taking I'm not against people doing what's it called, yoga. But if you take yoga out of Hinduism or their religion, you miss the point. Do you catch my drift?
Yeah, I get that.
Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So you miss the point. You can't take the spirituality out of it because it was built over thousands of years. And there's some inherent truths and goodness to it. Now, and the third thing
When do you truly understand women from a man's perspective?
we need to, what I am saying is for us as now Muslims, right? If I was looking... First of all, I need to understand I need to understand myself.
Yeah.
Okay? And then I need to understand, I'm a man. What is a man? What is a man? People don't know what the physiology of a man and a woman and psychology, sexuality, and so on. So, what am I expected? And that comes from religion, the purpose of my life. You see, then after that, you move on to the next stage, right? 99% of the time, people don't know their purpose in life. They don't know what's expected from their Lord, right? They don't know, and they have no relationship with their Lord. Their spirit. We're spiritual creatures. This is just a physical thing, okay? And then the other thing is understand the history of men and women and biology, physiology, society. Understand the history of marriage.
Can you give us high-level bullet points?
High-level bullet points. Look, remember, men are primordially hunter-gatherers. Women are fundamentally, childbearers. Most of society, and the other thing, when you understand the history of marriage and relationships, okay, marriage, at the end of the day, modern marriage, government-mandated marriage, is a very different thing from religious community marriage. Religious community marriage was really about organizing people so they don't have fornication. So you have, make sure it was about stopping childless. What is it called? Sex outside of marriage, right?
Yeah, fornication,
whatever you want. That was the main purpose, right? To regulate it, okay, so you don't have, fatherless children,
bastards.
Right? Yeah, bastards, right? The second thing was to regulate. Regulate men. When you have a society of sexless men, it's very problematic because it causes coups, it causes revolutions. It's well documented, very, very well documented. So when you have that in mind, and then you have to understand the environment you're in. Most of us are in artificial environments in cities. Most of human society, most of us human beings lived in the rural areas or semi-urban, so to speak. Modern urban societies are very, very bad for the health. What was the third thing you wanted to say as well? So you have to understand, you have to have
I'll go back to the hunter-gatherers.
Yeah.
I think I'm a hunter-gatherer.
Yeah.
And people might differ, but I'd like to think I'm alpha male, not because someone says it, but the way I think. Yeah. Why is it that so many men nowadays are asking women to contribute? Because Islam and our culture doubles down on this.
Yeah.
We have clear expectations and parameters, and they're defined.
Yeah.
But nowadays we have
I have a problem with the word alpha. You have to understand where the alpha male came from.
Sure.
So the idea of the alpha man. There's no problem with hunter-gatherers. The idea of the alpha man came from a chap called, I can't remember his name, but he was researching wolves.
Wolves,
yeah. And then that somehow jumped from wolves to a man, right? And there's a lot of social Darwinism going on here. It's really...
Was it not baboons? It was baboons, not wolves.
Baboons or something like that. There was some creature or something like that. And the problem with this whole alpha, male,
take the alpha out of it, but a man being a man.
Okay, right. So today you have to understand the economics, physiology, philosophy we are in today. Up until the 50s, up until World War One, women were at home. Yeah. World War II changed that because the men were dying, and women were allowed to work, right? And after that, women said, no, we're not going to, stop from working. We want a bit of that. And the governments as well in the day, the authorities in the day thought, hang on, we can actually make more tax revenue. It's well documented, right? Well documented. People like Mary Hattington, people like, I can give you Louise Perel, The Guardian.
That's fine.
These are
2023.
The problem
South Asian community.
So South Asian community, again, we're very traditional in our culture.
Yeah.
So when the expectation is we can mix religion, modernity, culture. It's all a mishmash. Okay, so a lot of our ladies, and I kind of feel sorry for them. They've become the men they want to marry, and a lot of the men have become the women they want to marry.
Wow, so women have become the men they want to marry, and men have become the women they want to marry. I get that.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, look, if you look at the status of men in TV and popular culture.
Yeah, Love Island.
No, not even Love Island. Let's go look at Bart Simpson. Why is Homer an idiot?
It's true. Why is he an idiot?
Yeah. Add that, then you look at South Park. Look at all these cartoons, movies.
Family
you never
Guy,
see this. If you were to watch films from the 60s, Ben-Hur, The Strong Man, The Ten Commandments, right? You know, Jason and the Argonaut.
No
right?
idea, but yeah.
But anyway, the 60s and
60s before our time
70s,
as well.
you know, what's it called? Clint Eastwood, you know, Dirty Harry, exactly. Or even Knight Rider, right? Is the strong man, okay? The hero man. Now, if you look at man, he's an idiot. He's dumb. He's lazy. He's always in the game, and he's promoted. It's celebrated. Add that to a woman who's always working. She's just achieved. There's a real push for gender equality, which is fine, but it doesn't necessarily.
So we're irrelevant now. Is that what you're saying? That we've become irrelevant?
No, because you see, the policies as a society and the authorities have taken has been fundamentally detrimental to the well-being of humans now. It's now. I give example. We were joking about this earlier, but I tell you what, you know, spinsterism in China is considered now an economic hazard. Did you know that?
I read about it. Yeah.
Yeah. The Western world will think, ha ha ha, bunch of idiots. Well, don't laugh. You created spinsterism through your policies, whether it's coordinated or not. Your fertility replacement rate is now below 1. That means what? It doesn't matter what did Elon Musk say when he went to Italy?
Tell me.
Have more babies. Now Italian women don't want babies. They want to go, they want to go to these wellness camp, go to Greece, take a selfie, on holiday.
Sing on TikTok.
So, they want to go Bali and do endless yoga, Do you understand what I'm saying? It's their choice. Right?
It is their choice.
When you complain about immigrants coming in, and then ultimately, when you get old and have your cat food for your cat,
but Muslim women do want babies. They do want babies.
No, Muslim women are confused.
Why are they confused? They're maternal. They do want babies.
Messages.
Oh, they are getting
mixed messages from their parents. Who also become emasculated. Remember, everyone is becoming emasculated as a society.
I get that, yeah.
Imams have become emasculated because they're scared, to rock the boat or say anything. So our religious fraternities, right, from celebrity imams, because there also are some of our imams, their main source of income is from the women. They don't want to rock the boat. You tell a woman, shut up, you're a feminist, but obey the husband. It's like, oh my God, that's wrong. Right? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Because they're scared, the authorities or will say, this is unacceptable. It's misogyny, it's unacceptable, it's gaslighting and so on.
Wrap into 30 seconds, I'm going to bring Brother Fareed in.
So to look, we have this issue is going to destroy the Muslim community. If you cannot produce families, what will happen if Muslim men and women, remember, society is delayed marriage. The longer you delay marriage, it means the age between you and the child is huge.
That's true.
From your first child.
That's true.
Okay? Number one. It means also everything is delayed. It means you can't grow as a community. Okay? Islam will struggle to establish itself. It's one of the maqasids of the Muslim communities. Objectives of the Sharia as Muslims. To establish yourself. Right? It means your Islamic schools, it means your charities, your mosques will be empty. You want to replace it with robots?
That's true.
Huh?
Yeah.
Do you want to replace it with robots?
I don't.
Yeah. So you're potentially in the future, you might even get a Sharia compliant robot who'll become your halal lover.
Bizarre. Thank you very much. I'll stop on that, Brother Fareed. You've waited patiently.
I was actually enjoying that.
Do you concur? Is there anything else you can add?
Well, listen. So there's a few points that the brother raised, and honestly, I think. Look, I just want to throw something out here. Right, it's very important because you've got. On two sofas here, right? You got two old boys, okay? Now, I don't want your audience to look at that and think, why has he brought these two old people on, right?
You've got 80 years or 90 years of experience between you.
When I joined the organisation that I work for, okay, I was a young boy, even younger than you.
Is it?
Right, absolutely, right? And I met people that I considered old at the time. They were like mid-40s, right? So one of my best friends was 45 years old, my age, right? And I looked at him as ancient, right? So I remember going home and saying to my dad, I said, I don't want to work here. And he's like, why not? He said, it's full of old people. And he said to me, no. You hang around with them, you're going to learn, right? And I remember a saying, it was a really interesting saying, right? They said, an old guy pulled me aside and he said to me, young broom sweeps good, But he said old broom knows all the corners.
Oh, beautiful. I love those English sayings.
Right? So when you're watching these two old brooms here today, we have I think, inshallah, and over time, there's a bit of savvy and,
Yeah.
we understand the corners and how to navigate the corners.
Yeah.
The points he made, the points he mentioned are absolutely correct. So what he's touched upon is globalization. Okay, the world is a small village now. Everyone thinks the same. Everyone acts the same. The thing about the apps, very important point, right? People burn hours on these apps, right? So one of the things I did, I wasn't on that previously, right? So one of the things I did was I took an old phone that I don't use, right? And I install the app on that. And I would give myself a time frame.
Yeah.
Like an hour a day, half an hour a day, right? Because you have to live your life. You have to do other things, right? So I wasn't constantly out. So if I'm with you, we're shooting a few racks of pool.
Yeah.
You don't want me to be going, oh, let me respond to this.
Yeah, it's weird.
That's antisocial. It's terrible, right? So I used to keep my apps phone at home. And I can, if I go to the office, I can't touch the apps phone.
But Fareed, what happened to your family functions? Look, pre-apps,
Right.
pre-thingy.
Oh, no, I'll tell
Because
you.
a lot of these family functions used to be the place.
Yep.
Community functions used to be the place
Yep.
where potential
Weddings.
weddings, potential girl. And remember, not only community functions, Eids and weddings, that's where people used to matchmake.
Yeah,
And nobody wants to
absolutely.
do that now. Now it's like a fashion show.
Absolutely. And that's true, right? So those avenues were explored, but for some reason it didn't come to pass. Look,
Do you feel that? And I know this is a really issue, right?
Ask.
And I look, initially when I was younger, I was a bit more religiously, intolerable. I'm going to admit it. My folks will probably be watching and say, ha 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 ha, hypocrite, Taliban, you hypocrite. Now I look back at it and I think to myself, you know what? I was a bit of an idiot. I really was. Because you see, I used to say everything was haram, 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 right? And look, when I grew up, it was those community functions,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And weddings, and it was all free mixing. Then in the late 1990s, noughties, there was a period of everything was segregated.
Yeah, it's
and
true.
and then when you read Islamic civilization and travel and so on, and when you travel as well, and when you read a lot and understand a lot and internalize a lot, like for example in Yemen, you can't look. This notion of free mixing has been so. I'm not saying free mixing is haram or halal here. It's been completely misunderstood. Right? The people in Muslim world, they have their own way of matchmaking in a very dignified, it's a very Jane Austen way of Pride and Prejudice matchmaking. So look, when we watch Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice, they're not taking off their clothes and saying, all that sort of stuff. No one's doing that vulgar sort of thing, right? Okay. But in the same way in the Muslim world, there was some little horse riding or wrestling, and a guy who was like, showing his
Chivalry.
not chivalry, the muscle.
Okay.
And then there's a girl in the corner knitting, and she was telling her auntie. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Or there were some festivals.
Yeah.
In Bengali culture we have something called. So some of our in Bengali culture we have something called the Boishaki Mela. Okay.
Yeah.
And
The annual festival,
The annual
yeah.
festival, which is like the annual, the monsoon season.
You're not going to get any good-looking girls there. I'm sorry, but you're
No.
not.
The point I'm trying to make is, look, that was actually initiated by Sultan, right?
Okay.
To celebrate, not in a religiously way, but lots of things used to happen there, and people used to matchmake over the years. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When we have these artificial events, like my marriage events, or a Mufti Fulani show, right? You go to the Excel, everything's segregated.
Yeah.
It frustrates people. Okay, it's artificial. Okay, it's actually it's fake.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's Islamic sometimes, because I don't like the word haram, saying it's haram, because it's not clear cut. Free mixing is an English word. The word in Arabic, free mixing, is completely different.
Ikhtilat, yes.
Exactly. And it's very fluid. Very, very fluid.
Fareed, just come back
I
in.
just want to come back on, because look, we're talking
So
about...
in that sense, I feel bad.
I get it.
Creating
we're talking
this
about-
nonsense.
Thank you.
events.
We're talking about the marriage crisis, right? And I just want to highlight something here, and we're all Muslims here. Your audience will be Muslim, inshallah, as well. There's a very famous tradition, isn't there, that the Iblis is sitting on his throne on the sea, right? And then these little shayateen, these little devils come and start reporting to him all the things that they've done, these wonderful things, yeah? I made a man steal, I made a man fornicate, etc., etc., right? And what does he say to them? He says, yeah, go away, go away. Like, he's not interested, right? But then he said, what does he say? He says, I made a man divorce his wife. And he allows him to sit on his throne, doesn't he?
Racism, yeah.
Right? You know, and but I'm thinking that he's got ahead of the game now, the Iblis, because he's preventing marriage, right? As opposed to breaking the family unit. Why is it that what is mubah, what is permitted, that he takes great pleasure in?
Yeah.
Great pleasure, right? But he doesn't take great pleasure in stealing or doing other kind of things, right? So I think, look, I agree with Brother Mizan here. The crisis of marriage is massive, right? We need to sort of, figure out what's going on in all of your marriage events, right? So I noted down what you said. Around 250,000 people, 15,000 people got married, right? That's a 6% success rate.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
If you want to do it statistically.
Yeah, statistically, right? But the thing about race he mentioned, I think is very important, right? Now, it's not a racist statement to just make that statement, right? The Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he was very aware of people's cultures.
Yeah.
You know, when they knew at that time, the era that the Bedouin Arabs, they were very harsh in nature.
Yeah.
Right. So the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he would deal with them, he would deal with them in a specific way.
Yeah.
When you're looking to get married, we need to be honest here, right? And this is nothing racist about saying this. Bengalis are different to Pakistanis.
Yeah.
Pakistanis are different to Indians.
And you say that, and we're
Moroccans
neighbours.
are different to Syrians.
We're neighbours.
Well, kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but he's right, because look, at the end of the day, look, your cultural reality is impinged on your environment, right? Okay, and how you do that is also reflects on how you build your relationships. So, for example, right, if people in the mountain area tend to be a bit more stronger and they tend to cover up more. Okay, or even, for example, in the Gulf, people say, why is it so, why Gulf guys so, they have high libido because of the weather as well.
Broody.
Yeah, they're more broody. You're absolutely right. Also, the harsh climate, right, actually increases, whereas guys in Indo-Malay, they're a bit more chilled. I mean, they're not, that's why, and it's interesting, and there's some research done and being done. Highest levels of porn levels tend to be in climates where societies are more restricted, and the climates are harsher.
Okay, so which climates are they, or which countries are they?
Unfortunately, it tends to be, predominantly the Arab world, in particular Egypt.
Is that statistically, is that backed up?
No, it is backed up, because they did a study and they found that Egyptian men have, I think, 60% more levels of testosterone than the average man outside, right? And if you talk to, I don't know if you've been to Egypt, right?
Yeah.
But sexual harassment of women on public transport and this guy is mental, right? Egypt has one of the highest levels of education, the highest percentage of PhD population.
PhDs, yeah.
Highest level of unemployment, right? Highest level of people not getting married.
Sexual
and stuff, right?
harassment.
The sexual harassment is terrible.
I've got two questions now. We can go on forever. This is very, very fascinating.
Yeah,
Two questions. The first one to Brother Fareed.
Yep.
You'll be getting married soon, inshallah.
Bismillah.
Right. So what is, in this day and age, how do I put this? So 30 years ago, a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old would be mature enough, women, to get married.
Yeah.
Nowadays, that's probably moved to about 25.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's mentality-wise, we're pampered here.
Yeah.
We're still, long story short, what's the best age for a man and woman to start looking?
Yeah.
Where's the correlation here? That's the first question, and I've got a question for you. So this is for Brother Fareed.
Right, so the answer to that question is, when you have the physical need to get married, start looking. And listen, I'm going to add something.
When
on
you say
here.
physical need, I probably had the physical
Because
need at 21, but I wasn't ready.
Well, no, listen. Then fast or do something else,
but
right?
more-
But what I'm
more-
saying to you, look. You get married when there's a necessity to get married. That's what our religion says, right?
Yeah.
And if you want to talk about I just want to add something
Look
here.
at the divorces now.
Right,
You get
so
married for
I
2
wanna add
months.
I want to add something else very important here, especially for the youth, right?
Yeah.
Come off social media.
Yeah.
It's destroying us.
Bin your phones.
Yeah.
No, really, bin your phones,
yeah.
right? Spend 15 minutes a day with yourself, right?
Absolutely right.
Think about who you are, where you want to go in life, what you want to achieve, right? Be mature, okay? But dump your WhatsApp, dump your Instagram, dump your Twitter. Seems ironic because I'm talking on a
Yeah,
program
make
that's
sure you
going
watch
to go
this.
on
No,
YouTube.
no, you're right.
No, but dump all that and be with yourself.
Yeah,
learn
absolutely.
who you are, right? And then you'll be prepared
So
for
in
marriage.
terms of age, what age is the right
the
age?
the right age, I can't answer that because it depends on the individual.
So let me answer that
if
for
you're
myself.
in Yemen and you're going to be a 50-year-old boy,
like I said.
No, you're right. He's right. What you're saying.
But my question's a bit more focused. We're British. I'm talking about South Asian people here.
okay,
men
let's
me.
take you as an
Listen,
example. Right, so you're 30 years old.
30, yeah.
Okay.
What was the right time for me to get married? 28.
Look, no, wait, listen. What are the obstacles for you in not getting married? Whatever they are, get rid of them.
Right. Yeah.
Or try to get rid of them, right?
Right.
Because the thing is, you're ready for marriage very early.
Yeah.
Right?
Am I? Some of my friends got
of
married
course
early
we are.
20s.
No, but he's right, and also I want to add to that. You should have got married at 25.
Not
or
25.
No, why not?
Because I was reckless then.
What do you mean by reckless?
I didn't want it. It's not I didn't want marriage.
Physically, you're ready.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's number one
so
priority.
I didn't. It's not. So that's a very good question.
So
Right?
become emotionally ready.
Yeah.
So it was emotional readiness, and
No,
also
but that emotionally was your problem.
financially.
No,
financially, I could provide at 25 or 26.
You could. So you had all the ingredients.
Not
And
necessarily.
No, but that emotional is an exaggerated thing.
Yeah.
Right?
He's right.
Emotionally, look, it's all because modern societies
Yeah.
exaggerates emotionalism. Like, oh my God, calm down. Right now, people in Gaza are maturing over seconds.
true.
Right? It's your context. You were avoiding it because I tell you why.
Yeah.
You didn't sit down in the mirror and said, you know the story of Snow White, don't you?
No, I don't.
Of course,
No,
you
I don't,
And
no.
the Seven
What-
Dwarfs.
Oh, the Seven Dwarfs.
What did the witch say
I don't know what the witch
on the
said.
mirror? Mirror, mirror.
On the wall.
On the wall, yeah.
Who's the
I'm not
fairest
going to
of-
repeat it. Who's the fairest of them all? Yeah.
Right. You should have done what I say, which is Muslim marriage events. Mirror, mirror on the wall, would I marry myself at all?
Wow.
Because you sound at 24, 25, narcissist, full of pride.
Who, me?
You know,
Now,
I'm
or
not
25?
saying is
Let's talk about your
No,
age.
I'm talking
Yeah.
about your age group
Sure.
because your culturing, had made you into a weak man. You should have been married by now.
Okay.
Right now you're 30.
Yep.
You're behind.
I'm behind. Fair enough. That's the way life
Listen,
is.
what options do you want,
So
though?
another thing. I'm not going to go into my
Not you
life.
personally.
But not you personally.
Zina or marriage.
As an
So,
example.
that's the
No,
option.
true. So
That's the option.
firstly, these are the 2-3 points I want to make. So my friends, some of my close pals, they got married. They found the love of their life very young, and it changed them for the better. And they got married around the 24, 25 mark.
Okay.
Alhamdulillah, up until now, they're happy. They're happy. At the age of 22, if the right woman came along, I would have got married. She would have made me a better man. She would have made me see the future and get married. So in all honesty, and hopefully this helps the audience out there, I think I was ready about 26, 27. But I could have been ready earlier if a right woman came to me earlier, but they didn't. Because my friends who grew up...
Why is the onus on the right woman coming to you? Why don't you search?
Because, I'm a British boy. And and it's
Go on,
true.
expand.
No,
yeah,
there's no such thing as the right woman coming. Again, this notion of right woman coming. Look, listen. Physically, does she attract you? There. Has she got?
No, but physical attraction isn't enough, though.
No, thing is, you again. This nonsense of at 24 is different for everyone. But I'm saying this is a generic problem.
For the right woman, I'd get married at 25,
This
but
is a
otherwise, no.
No, this is a generational
young.
problem. No, this is a generational problem of modern Muslims, modern human beings.
Yeah.
There is no such thing as the right one coming along. Right? First of all, it's physical. Right? You have to have some element of chemistry, otherwise you can't be intimate with the person.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? The second thing is, are they gonna be a drama queen for you? It's not gonna work. You don't know that. You can tell. You have to do your due diligence.
Sure.
Right? Okay. And it varies from religious values to mannerisms at home and family, etc., etc. You could have made a decision, but you didn't. Right?
Another thing.
Who are
that is
people?
true.
Do you understand what I'm trying to
Right,
say?
yeah.
And now you're paying the consequences.
I'm not
5
paying
years
for
later.
anything.
No,
I'm not-
5 years later.
I don't think I am. I think I'm at a right mental state, financial
No,
state.
but you'll never be a mental state.
No,
what
I
happens
think
if you
I
marry
am.
tomorrow and she says hasta la vista?
Can I ask you a question? Because this is quite important.
Sure.
Because you're obviously two old boys talking to you now.
Yeah.
Okay, look.
I appreciate this, by the way.
Okay, look. Okay. Take it from me, yeah?
Sure.
You're always going to get to a point where you're going to want more and you're going to put more obstacles in the way. You're going to be like, well, I need to earn X amount of money. I need to be doing
No,
this.
I
need to be
don't think that.
No,
I
not you,
can-
not
I
you,
can-
not
yeah.
you. I'm just
Generally speaking, yeah,
I'm talking generally
sure,
speaking,
sure.
right? What you have to do is come to a point where you say, marriage is a necessity for me. I have to get married. It's either I get married or I commit haram.
Yeah.
Okay? And whatever's required to get married, you prepare yourself for it. Okay? It's
Good advice.
We're not going to, she's not going to fall on your lap.
Right.
Okay? And you're not going to fall on her lap, right?
Yeah.
You want to keep away from, you want to abstain from the haram, you want to have a family, you want
But
to raise
also, he's
children.
lacking goals. It's very clear at 24, 25.
Yep.
You were faffing around. You had no objectives, no goals. You're probably those types of doing selfies in Greece.
I definitely would do selfies in Greece.
That tours. Do you understand what I
generally, I get what you're saying, yeah.
You understand?
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
either one of those, pump it in Ferrari Dubai types,
Yeah.
or one of those, sort of types. I'm sorry, and I know it sounds like a cliche and stereotypical. I actually think there's a lot of truth in stereotypes. stereotypes, and people have to accept it now.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, then shut up. Get on with it. If you wanna be against the status quo,
Yeah.
right? Bengali men now have more choice. He's Sri Lankan Yemenis, very small. You have so many Bengali girls into Hamlets or and what is it?
Further
East
afield,
London, London. It's not a case of you're in the 70s or 80s where communities are smaller. Okay. Number two, you have to you didn't sit down in the mirror and take account of yourself, right? And you had very poor guidance in terms of what is your aim, what is your objective, what is you want to do in your life.
Last
Right?
question.
Not you personally,
I understand.
that
It's
generation.
advice
When I
for
see a
my
lot
audience.
of guys at this
Okay.
age, I get really peed off when they say, "What are you doing?"
Take the plunge, bro.
Okay. Last question. Thank you. Hopefully, my audience, and I'm using myself as a guinea pig, will take heed on this. Last question to you, very concise and very brief. Yeah. Are we too loose nowadays
What
as
do
a
you mean by
Muslim
loose?
community in getting to know each other?
What's loose?
So loose would mean.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
No, I don't know what it means. What does loose mean?
So
Just
loose,
me to understand
loose
it.
meaning that we go above and beyond what's within
we
our
do.
parameters.
Yeah, we do. We're I think because it's a consequence of too much choice. Remember, most of society did not have a choice, and they literally were given their bride or husband on the day of the wedding, and you just have to deal with it. Right? There was no communication at all. We've gone from zero communication to communication. We're chatting with the person in the toilet. No, I'm bringing it. They're in the toilet having a bath. Sending an emoji saying, and the next you know it, I'm getting guys and girls talking. Oh, he dumped me. Oh, he text dumped me. Where were you when he dumped you? Let me guess, in the toilet.
Right. Thank you for listening. That was very interesting. Remember, I brought on two ordinary guests with over 90 years experience, thinking and discussing what you've been thinking and discussing. So our podcast, if you haven't known by now, we're all about ordinary people thinking and discussing for ordinary people. We're not influencers or people with Ferraris sitting in penthouses doing your thinking for you. That's what we're about. Just before I do go, I do want to clarify, especially for the younger crowd, people that are younger than 25, do not do sex before marriage. We're from a Muslim community, doubled down by culture. If you are in a position to get married and you found the woman of your dreams, leave that till after marriage, but also think long and hard. Like I mentioned myself at the age of 25. Don't get married for the sake of getting married. You're going to harm her and you're going to harm yourself. Two families are at risk here. So get married, take a long, hard think about whether you're psychologically ready, you're emotionally ready, and you found the right person, and then commit to them, and make sure you commit to them for good. Going forward, our next episodes are going to be women that are going to come on the show. I think I've had too many men on, and they've said their peace of mind. I need to have women on now, and they're going to give us a different perspective, a different dynamic. It's not a one-way traffic here. And hopefully, inshallah, as we go forward with the episodes on marriage, we can come to a consensus and we can really highlight where the problems lie and how we can identify what the problems are and collectively address that as a community. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching.